First contact at Repair Station 9. The vast expanse of deep space held many wonders, but none quite like Repair Station 9. The massive structure hung in the void like a mechanical spider's web, its numerous docking arms extending outward to cradle vessels of all shapes and sizes. What made it truly remarkable wasn't its size or its location at the crossroads of 7 major trade routes. It was the fact that it was run entirely by humans. Director Maya Rodriguez stood at the primary observation deck, her dark eyes scanning the holographic displays that surrounded her. Each screen showed a different repair operation in progress. Centaurian mining vessels, Proximan diplomatic ships, and even the occasional independent trader. The station's reputation for handling the impossible had spread far across the galaxy, making it the go-to facility for repairs that other species' engineering teams had declared hopeless. "Director, we're picking up an unusual signal," announced Tom Chen, the station's senior communications officer. His fingers danced across the haptic interface as he tried to clean up the incoming transmission. "It's not matching any known configuration in our database." Maya raised an eyebrow. In their line of work, unusual often meant interesting, and interesting usually meant profitable. "Put it through, Tom." The main display flickered to life, revealing a sight that made even the veteran station director catch her breath. A fleet of ships unlike anything she'd ever seen filled the screen. Their hulls seemed to be made of some sort of living metal, with patterns of light pulsing beneath the surface, like bioluminescent sea creatures. But what caught her attention wasn't their exotic design. It was the extensive damage they'd sustained. "This is Commander Xuril of the Meridian Collective," came a melodious voice, accompanied by subtle harmonics that the translation matrix struggled to process. "We seek assistance from Station 9. Our situation is desperate." Maya studied the damage patterns on the ships. The living metal appeared to be dying in places, creating dead zones that spread like disease across their hulls. "Commander, I'm Director Rodriguez. Can you elaborate on the nature of your emergency?" "We encountered an anomaly in the Vorathian expanse," Xuril explained, their voice carrying notes of distress that transcended species barriers. "Our biometal hulls were exposed to something we've never seen before. None of our healing protocols are working, and we've been turned away from 17 other repair facilities. You're our last hope." A smile tugged at Maya's lips. Last hope was practically Station 9's unofficial motto. "Bring your fleet in slowly, Commander. Docking arms 7 through 12 are clear. We'll need to run some preliminary scans, but I think we can help." As the alien ships made their approach, Maya called up the station's chief engineer. "Jack, you're going to want to see this. How do you feel about getting your hands on some living metal?" Jack Morrison's weathered face appeared on a side screen, his eyes already lighting up at the prospect of a new challenge. Living metal. Now that's something we haven't tackled before. Regular metals we can weld, reshape, or replace. But living metal. He stroked his gray-flecked beard thoughtfully. "That's going to require a whole new approach." "That's exactly why they came to us," Maya replied. "Assemble your best team. We're about to make first contact with the Meridian Collective, and I want to show them why human engineers are the best in the galaxy." As the massive alien vessels drew closer, their damaged sections became even more apparent. The once beautiful living metal was riddled with dead patches that seemed to spread before their eyes. Maya could see why other repair stations had turned them away. This wasn't just a matter of replacing parts or realigning systems. This would require understanding how the living metal functioned, what was killing it, and how to help it heal. But that's what humans did best. Where other species saw impossible problems, humans saw challenges to overcome. Where others relied on established protocols, humans improvised. Where others gave up, humans persevered. "Tom, start gathering all the data we can about their hull composition," Maya ordered. "Jack, I want you and your team ready for a preliminary inspection as soon as they're docked. And someone get Dr. Sarah Chen from Xenobiology up here. If we're dealing with living metal, we might need her expertise." As the station's crew sprang into action, Maya watched the approaching fleet with a mixture of excitement and determination. This would be either Station 9's greatest triumph or its most spectacular failure. But as she observed the efficient coordination of her team, she knew which outcome she was betting on. The Meridian ships finally came to rest in the station's embrace, their pulsing lights casting ethereal patterns across the docking bays. This was just the beginning of what promised to be one of the most challenging repairs Station 9 had ever attempted. But as Maya looked at her assembled team, engineers, technicians, scientists, all ready to tackle the impossible, she knew they would find a way. Because that's what humans did. They solved the unsolvable. They fixed the unfixable. And in doing so, they continued to prove why species across the galaxy sought them out when all other options had failed. "All right, people," Maya announced, her voice carrying the weight of command and the excitement of discovery. "Let's show the Meridian Collective why they were right to come to us. Let's show them what human engineering can do. The impossible fix." The initial scans of the Meridian fleet's living metal hulls painted a picture more complex than anyone at Station 9 had anticipated. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the main engineering bay, surrounded by holographic displays showing microscopic views of the dying metal. Each image revealed intricate patterns of molecular structures that seemed to defy conventional physics. "It's not just metal," she explained to the assembled team. "It's a quantum biological matrix. The metal doesn't just live, it thinks." Her fingers traced the flowing patterns of light that still pulsed weakly through the damaged sections. "And right now, it's thinking it's dying." Jack Morrison crossed his arms, his experienced engineer's eyes studying the damage patterns. "So we're not just mechanics anymore. We're doctors trying to save a patient." He turned to Commander Cyril, whose crystalline form shimmered with anxiety. "Can you tell us exactly what happened in the Vorathian expanse?" The alien commander's voice resonated with harmonics of distress. "We encountered what we thought was a natural phenomenon, a quantum storm. But this was different. The energy signatures were wrong. It didn't just damage our ships, it infected them. The dead zone spread, and our usual regeneration protocols only seemed to accelerate the deterioration." Maya Rodriguez, who had joined them in the engineering bay, frowned. "Could it have been a weapon? Something designed specifically to target your technology?" "If it was," Jack interjected, "that might explain why conventional repairs aren't working. We're not just dealing with damage. We're dealing with a programmed attack on the molecular level." Sarah's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "That's it. We're not looking at this the right way. We've been treating it like a mechanical problem. But what if we approach it like an immune response?" She pulled up new diagrams, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "The living metal isn't just dying. It's fighting something. And losing." The engineering bay erupted into a flurry of activity as human ingenuity kicked into high gear. Teams were assembled, theories were proposed and discarded, and equipment was modified for purposes its original designers never intended. It was chaos, but it was productive chaos, the kind that had become humanity's trademark across the galaxy. "We need to isolate a section of healthy hull and study how it responds to the infection," Sarah proposed. "If we can understand the metal's natural defense mechanisms, maybe we can find a way to strengthen them." Jack nodded, already mentally designing the containment system they'd need. "We'll have to build something from scratch. Nothing we have is designed to work with quantum biological materials." He turned to his engineering team. "I want every spare quantum sensor we have, and someone get me those experimental force field generators from Bay 4. Commander Cyril watched the humans work with a mixture of hope and confusion. Their methods seemed haphazard, their approach almost random. "Your techniques are unorthodox," they observed. Maya smiled. "That's because we're not following any established protocols. We're making this up as we go along, based on what we observe and what we think might work. It's how humans solve problems. We experiment, we fail, we learn, and we try again." The next 48 hours saw Station 9 transform into something between a research laboratory and a surgical ward. Sarah and her team worked to understand the quantum biological nature of the living metal, while Jack's engineers cobbled together equipment that, by any reasonable standard, shouldn't have worked at all. They discovered that the quantum storm had introduced a kind of viral code into the living metal's matrix, a self-replicating pattern that corrupted the metal's natural processes. Traditional repair methods failed because they treated the symptoms rather than the cause. What they needed was a way to help the metal's own immune system recognize and fight the infection. "Look at this," Sarah called out, pointing to a new scan. "When we expose the healthy metal to certain electromagnetic frequencies, it actually strengthens its quantum bonds. It's like giving it vitamins." Jack leaned in, studying the results. "Can we amplify that effect? Create some kind of electromagnetic treatment that boosts the metal's natural defenses?" "Maybe," Sarah replied, "but we'd need a way to deliver the treatment throughout the entire hull. These ships are massive." "What about the light patterns?" Maya suggested, pointing to the bioluminescent pulses that still flowed through the healthier sections of hull. "They seem to act like a circulatory system. Could we use them to distribute the treatment?" The idea sparked a new round of frenzied activity. Jack's team began modifying the station's power distribution network to generate the specific electromagnetic frequencies they needed, while Sarah worked to find the perfect dose that would strengthen without overwhelming the living metal systems. Commander Cyril watched all of this with growing amazement. "In all our centuries of space travel, we've never seen engineering quite like this. You're not just repairing our ships, you're helping them heal themselves." "Sometimes the best solutions aren't about forcing things to work our way," Maya explained. "They're about understanding how things want to work naturally and helping them do it better. It's a lesson humanity learned the hard way, through countless failures and unexpected successes." As the teams worked, the first small-scale tests showed promise. Patches of dying metal began to show signs of recovery, the natural luminescence returning as the quantum biological systems reasserted themselves. But they all knew that scaling up from a test sample to an entire fleet would present its own challenges. The real question wasn't whether they could save the Meridian ships. It was whether they could do it before the infection spread too far to be stopped. And as the dead zones continued to creep across the magnificent vessels, time was becoming their most precious and limited resource. Breaking point. The warning klaxons aboard Station 9 blared to life at 300 station time. Maya Rodriguez was out of her quarters and racing toward the engineering bay before the automated alert finished its first cycle. The scene that greeted her made her blood run cold. The experimental electromagnetic treatment system had overloaded, sending cascading power surges through 3 decks of the station. More alarming were the readings from the Meridian ships. The infection in their living metal hulls had suddenly accelerated, spreading twice as fast as before. "What happened?" Maya demanded, finding Jack Morrison and his team already working frantically to contain the damage. "The power distribution network couldn't handle the load," Jack explained, his face illuminated by the emergency lighting. "We tried to scale up the treatment too quickly. The feedback loop created frequencies we hadn't anticipated." He gestured to the nearest Meridian vessel, where large sections of once luminescent hull had gone completely dark. And somehow, that triggered a mutation in the infection. Commander Cyril's crystalline form pulsed with colors that the translation matrix interpreted as extreme distress. "Our primary systems are failing. The neural pathways in the living metal are shutting down faster than ever. At this rate, we have less than 6 hours before total systemic collapse." Dr. Sarah Chen burst into the bay, her tablet displaying a cascade of deteriorating readings. "The infection isn't just spreading anymore, it's evolving. It's learning from our attempts to stop it, adapting to overcome our countermeasures." She looked up, her expression grim. "We need to completely rethink our approach, but we don't have time to start from scratch." The situation rapidly deteriorated into what threatened to become Station 9's first true failure. Teams of engineers and scientists argued over potential solutions, each proposal seeming more desperate than the last. The Meridian ships continued to darken, their living metal dying sector by sector. Perhaps, Commander Xeril suggested, their harmonics carrying notes of resignation, it would be best to begin evacuation procedures. We cannot risk your station being infected as well. No, Maya's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. We're not giving up. This is exactly the kind of situation where humans excel, when everything's falling apart, when conventional wisdom says it's impossible, when failure seems certain. That's when we're at our best. She turned to her team. We've been thinking about this the wrong way. We've been trying to fix this like engineers, then like doctors. But what if we think about it like... She paused, a new idea forming. Like gardeners. Gardeners. Jack raised an eyebrow. Yes. In nature, when a plant is dying, sometimes the only way to save it is to cut away the infected parts entirely. Let the healthy sections regrow. She turned to Sarah. You said the living metal thinks. Can we teach it to compartmentalize? To sacrifice the infected sections to save the whole? Sarah's eyes widened, like controlled burning to stop a forest fire. We could try to trigger a localized quantum collapse in the infected areas. Create dead zones on our terms, rather than letting the infection spread them randomly. But we'd need a way to contain the collapse. Jack interjected, already warming to the idea, and a power source stable enough to maintain quantum barriers around the healthy sections. What about the station's core? Maya suggested. If we reroute power from non-essential systems, it would leave us running on emergency reserves, Jack warned. Better than watching these ships die while we play it safe. The next few hours saw Station 9 engage in its most daring operation yet. Jack's engineers worked to modify the station's power grid, while Sarah's team developed a way to trigger controlled quantum collapses in the living metal. The remaining healthy sections of the Meridian ships pulsed with increasingly erratic patterns as their systems struggled to survive. Commander Xeril watched the preparations with a mixture of horror and fascination. You would risk your entire station to save our ships, even after your first attempt failed. Especially after our first attempt failed, Maya replied. That's how humans learn, through failure. Each mistake teaches us something new, shows us a different approach we hadn't considered. And sometimes, the biggest breakthroughs come right after the worst failures. The plan was simultaneously simple and incredibly complex in its execution. They would systematically trigger quantum collapses in the most heavily infected areas, creating controlled dead zones that would act as fire breaks to stop the infection spread. Meanwhile, the station's power would be used to generate quantum barriers protecting the healthy sections, giving them time to recover and eventually regrow into the sacrificed areas. This is going to hurt, Sarah warned the Meridian commander. Your ships will lose significant portions of their mass. The recovery process will take months, maybe years. But they will survive. Xeril asked. If this works, yes, they'll be smaller, at least temporarily, but alive. And living things can heal, can grow back stronger than before. As the station's lights dimmed to divert power to the operation, Maya looked at her team. Humans pushing themselves to their limits, using their unique combination of desperation and innovation to attempt the impossible. She thought about how this moment exemplified everything that made humanity special in the galaxy. Their refusal to accept failure, their ability to learn from mistakes, and their willingness to take enormous risks in pursuit of solutions that other species would never even attempt. The operation was about to begin, and everyone knew they only had one chance to get it right. Station 9's reputation, the Meridian Fleet's survival, and possibly the future of human-alien cooperation in the galaxy all hung in the balance. But as Maya watched her team make their final preparations, she felt something that overshadowed even her concern: pride in humanity's unique approach to solving the impossible. Innovation under fire. The enormous power conduits running through Station 9's maintenance tunnels thrummed with dangerous levels of energy as Jack Morrison made final adjustments to the quantum barrier generators. Each connection and circuit had been pushed well beyond its design specifications, held together by a combination of human engineering and what some might call blind faith. "Primary systems are ready," he reported through the comm system, his voice steady despite the risks. "Though I should mention that about half of what we're doing isn't exactly covered by the station's warranty." In the main control center, Maya Rodriguez managed a grim smile. "Note in the log that we'll deal with the paperwork later, assuming there's still a station to file it from." She turned to Sarah Chen, who was monitoring the quantum readings from the Meridian ships. "How are our patients doing?" "The infections reached 80% of their total mass," Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. "We're about to hit the point of no return. If we're going to do this, it has to be now." Commander Cyril's crystalline form had taken on a deep, mournful purple. "Our ship's consciousness is fading. They're dying. Director Rodriguez, whatever you plan to do." "We're doing it now," Maya interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of command. "All teams, execute Operation Firebreak on my mark." She took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments would either save the Meridian fleet or doom it entirely. Mark. The station's lights dimmed to emergency levels as power was diverted to the quantum barrier generators. Jack's modified systems began their work, creating precisely controlled fields of energy that would isolate the healthy sections of the living metal ships. In the sectors marked for quantum collapse, Sarah's team initiated a cascade of carefully calculated disruptions. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Huge sections of the Meridian ships began to crystallize and break away, like massive sheets of dark ice calving from a glacier. The infection tried to spread, but found itself contained by the quantum barriers, trapped in zones that were systematically being sacrificed to save the whole. "Power fluctuations in Barrier Generator 3. One of Jack's engineers called out. "The containment field is destabilizing. Reroute auxiliary power from life support," Maya ordered. "We can breathe thin air for a few minutes if we have to." Sarah's eyes were fixed on her readings. "The healthy sections are responding. Look, the quantum patterns are reorganizing themselves, becoming more resistant to the infection. They're learning, adapting." The process continued for several tense hours. Sections of dead metal broke away from the Meridian ships, while the protected areas began to show signs of recovery. The living metal's natural luminescence grew stronger, its patterns more stable. But the strain on Station 9's systems was becoming critical. "Primary power grid is redlining," Jack reported. "We're pushing way beyond safety limits. If we don't reduce the load soon." A massive power surge interrupted him, sending cascading failures through several systems. Emergency containment fields flickered dangerously as the station's overtaxed systems threatened to give out entirely. "We can't maintain the barriers at this level," one of the engineers shouted. "We need to shut it down." "No," Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. "Look at the quantum readings. The living metal, it's not just surviving anymore. It's thriving." The trauma of the controlled collapse triggered some kind of evolutionary response. The healthy sections are producing new growth patterns we haven't seen before. Maya studied the data streaming across her screens. The remaining sections of the Meridian ships were indeed showing unprecedented levels of activity. The living metal wasn't just healing. It was rebuilding itself, incorporating elements of the quantum barrier's energy patterns into its own structure. "Commander Cyril," she called out, "are you seeing this? Your ships aren't just surviving. They're evolving." The Meridian commander's colors shifted through patterns of amazement. "The neural pathways, they're stronger than before, more resilient. The ship's consciousness is stabilizing, but it's different somehow. Enhanced. That's because they learned from us," Sarah explained, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. "Just like human cells can develop immunity after surviving a disease, your living metal adapted to survive the infection. But it did more than that. It incorporated aspects of our quantum barrier technology into its own matrix." As if to emphasize her point, The remaining sections of the Meridian ships began to pulse with new patterns of light, familiar yet alien, a hybrid of their original bioluminescence and the energy signatures of human technology. The dead zones had cost them nearly 40% of their original mass, but what remained was undeniably stronger. "Jack," Maya called over the comm, "can we begin power reduction to primary systems?" "Already on it," he replied. "Though I have to say, Director, when they wrote the station's engineering manuals, I don't think they ever imagined we'd be using our equipment quite like this." "That's because they wrote manuals for machines," Maya responded, watching as the Meridian ships continued their remarkable transformation. "But we just helped prove something I've always believed about technology. The best solutions come when we stop treating it like just machinery and start understanding it as something that can grow, adapt, and evolve. Just like us." The emergency klaxons finally fell silent as Station 9's systems were gradually returned to normal operating parameters. The immediate crisis was over, but everyone knew that this was just the beginning. They had not only saved the Meridian fleet, but had inadvertently helped create something entirely new, a hybrid of alien living metal and human quantum engineering that would change the way both species approach technology. Legacy of Station 9. 3 months after the crisis, Repair Station 9 had become the busiest facility in known space. Ships from across the galaxy arrived daily, their crews hoping to witness the remarkable transformation of the Meridian fleet firsthand. The station's observation deck was crowded with representatives from dozens of species, all watching in fascination as the living metal vessels continued their unprecedented evolution. Maya Rodriguez stood at her usual spot, studying the holographic displays that tracked the ship's recovery. Where there had once been massive dead zones, new growth had emerged, sleeker, stronger, and more resilient than before. The hybrid patterns of alien bioluminescence and human quantum engineering created stunning displays that rippled across the hulls like auroras. "The latest scans are remarkable," Sarah Chen reported, joining Maya at the window. "The new neural pathways are 30% more efficient than the original design. The living metal isn't just resisting quantum disruptions now, it's actively adapting to them in real time. Which explains why every major shipbuilding consortium in the galaxy is suddenly interested in our unorthodox repair methods," Jack Morrison added, his voice carrying a note of amused satisfaction. "Funny how quickly reckless becomes innovative when you succeed." Commander Cyril, who had remained at the station to oversee their fleet's recovery, shifted through colors of contentment and gratitude. "Our Circle of Elders has officially revised our engineering protocols," they announced. "For the first time in our history, we're incorporating principles of controlled chaos and adaptive failure into our design philosophy." Maya smiled. "Controlled chaos. I like that. It's a pretty good description of human engineering in general." The station's success had led to more than just technical advances. The unprecedented merger of human and Meridian technology had opened new diplomatic channels, leading to formal alliance discussions between Earth and the collective. More importantly, it had changed how other species viewed human engineering practices. "We've received 6 new contract offers this morning alone," Maya noted, reviewing the incoming transmissions, including one from the Axioni Confederation, and they usually consider human engineering methods to be practically barbaric. "They're finally starting to understand," Jack said, running a diagnostic on one of their newly upgraded repair systems. "Sometimes you need to break something to understand how to make it better. Sometimes the best solutions come from mistakes and accidents." Sarah nodded, her attention drawn to new data streaming in from the Meridian ships. "The living metal's ability to incorporate our quantum barrier technology proves something I've always suspected. The line between biological and mechanical evolution is thinner than most species think. Life finds a way to adapt, whether it's made of flesh, metal, or something in between." A small alert chimed on Maya's display, announcing the arrival of yet another diplomatic delegation. This one carried representatives from some of the galaxy's oldest spacefaring races, species that had previously dismissed human engineering as primitive and unreliable. Now they came seeking to learn, to understand how these supposedly primitive methods had achieved what their advanced technology could not. Director Rodriguez, Commander Cyril's harmonics carried tones of formal address. Our fleet's council has reached a decision. We wish to establish a permanent engineering exchange program with Station 9. Our younger engineers would benefit greatly from learning your perspective. You mean our habit of ignoring manuals and making things up as we go along? Jack quipped. Precisely, Cyril replied, their colors shifting to what the translation matrix identified as wry amusement. We've discovered that there is wisdom in your apparent chaos. Your willingness to embrace failure as a path to success, to see disasters as opportunities for evolution. These are concepts our species had forgotten in our pursuit of perfect order. Maya looked out at the transformed Meridian ships, their hybrid technology a testament to what could be achieved when different approaches to problem-solving were combined. That's the real legacy of what happened here, she said. Not just the technical breakthroughs, but the proof that progress doesn't always come from careful planning and controlled conditions. Sometimes it comes from taking risks, from being willing to fail spectacularly in pursuit of something new.